Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am Dion Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today I'm making my return to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition. Why is it still so playable? Video series. So this is part 4. I've been doing these videos in the order in which the books were published. So I began with the Monster Manual first, number 1, then the Player's Handbook, followed by the Dungeon Master's Guide. So this here is number 4 in the series. What's interesting about this is that this is a monster manual that was produced by TSR UK, so in the United Kingdom, and that probably explains a lot of the graphic differences in this volume here, as well as just the nature of some of the creatures and beasts and humanoid types that are in here. So without further ado, I'm going to switch over and we'll go to this big screen here so you can actually take a really good look at the book, and you can see the artwork, of the cover is this is an iconic figure of a Githyanki, if I'm pronouncing it right. And here you have the back, and these were extremely powerful creatures or humanoids that you might unfortunately end up facing in the game, and so it's perfectly understandable that they would be on the front cover. As far as the condition of the book, because I've been on a bit of a tear, you can actually see behind me over here, I've rearranged some of my books there, and I have almost all of my first edition back in its proper place. So I've purchased somewhere around 8 more hardcovers over these last couple of weeks, so I'm really close to finishing up, and let's go digging right into this. So I have the PDF, and I'm going to switch to PDF view so that we can take a closer look at this. So here we have TSR's Fiend Folio, the Tomb of Creatures Malevolent and Benign. Okay, it's an alphabetical listing. It's edited by Don Turnbull, Managing Director of TSR UK Limited. 1981 was its first publication. And you have illustrators are Chris Baker, Jeff D., Emmanuel, Albie Fiore, Alan Hunter, Russ Nicholson, Errol Otis, Jim Roslov, David Sutherland, Billy Willingham, Polly Wilson, and Tony Yates. And the cover is by Emmanuel. So we'll take a closer look at this forward here and see if anything really does jump out as being necessary to, point out. So as I mentioned, this is the first publication coming out of the UK, and there would be a series of modules, adventure modules that would come out of the UK as well, and many of those were really top notch, and maybe someday I'll get around to doing a video on classic modules for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Nothing really other than that in this here forward. And the forward is written by Don Turnbull. And same format of creatures, obviously. So they are written for first edition Adventures in Dragons. So the monster blocks and all of the characteristics and stats and everything are, uniform to the system. And here we have, and we will go through as much of this as possible. And I'm going to focus on certain ones that stood out to me and certain ones that I had used. Now, of course, I might skim over something that a subscriber is going to point out, oh, you should have spent more time talking about this particular creature. And that's just the way it is. I will focus on the ones that I think really do stand out or are iconic, at this point. I never actually used the Arakakra. I'm terrible at pronouncing. But I believe this is a playable race now in fifth edition. So that's one of the surprising things. And you can see here some of these things. I will admit this, and actually let me come to a screen because when I talk about my own impressions of things, I like it to be face to face here. The Fiend Folio was not my favorite monster manual, and that was just something back then. There was just something about it that I wasn't too I just wasn't crazy about it. I don't know if it was the art style of it or there was a lot of psionics in this, and I'll focus a little bit on that in turn. And we generally didn't use psionics, or it was something that as a young teenager playing D&D, it was like, well, I never really thought that our characters were prepared for psionics in the sense that we had almost an irrational fear of psionics and certainly creatures like this were and mind flayers as well, but we knew that when we were facing any of these creatures with psionic abilities, it was always something that we were loath to do. We couldn't had a great fear for them. So so that's partly what informed my impression of this book as well. Was I felt that it was really a dangerous compilation of creatures that we just didn't like to face as often. So that's pretty much it. So I'll get back to this here now. I mean, some of the names too, like the adherer is, just some of those things. Just I wasn't crazy about them. The Aliax, the Algoid, a rabbit with a unicorn horn on it. Some of the things were kind of strange, and certainly that might be that United Kingdom, British aesthetic that they had for some of these creatures. The Astral Searcher, don't have a picture of it. The Babbler. A weird mutation of lizardmen. Babblers are large, ponderous marsh dwellers known as marsh gibberers to native tribes dwelling, just kind of weird twists on things. I don't know how this giant bat is different than in the monster manual, but I do remember encountering these creatures. Burbalang. And one of my two DMs threw those at us once. Blind Time. I don't know, kind of another weird type of creature. Terrible name. Bloodworms. I used to fish with bloodworms, so bloodhawks, bone snappers, the buka, Looks very similar to a pixie. It's been decades since I've looked through this. I used bullywugs. I liked bullywugs. Um, so that's something that I did like to use in from this book here. Bunyips, a carbuncle, caterwauls, Corfer corpse. I'm sure we probably faced those at one point. These foul creatures of the undead class are found in stranded funeral barges or in any other situation in which a corpse has failed to return to its maker. Though the coffer corpse resembles a zombie, it is treated as a wraith on the clerical undead table. So it's just kind of a more powerful zombie. Um, Still only 2 hit die, so not a really strong kind of creature. Low intelligence, chaotic evil in nature. Soon to be a playable class. I'm kidding. Uh, Crabmen, Crypt Thing. I wonder when the Crypt Keeper came out. I wonder if this was a toss over to that. Probably this came before the Crypt Keeper, but I'll have to look into that. A Dakan, which looks like a giant gorilla. A Dark Creeper, which looks like basically like a dark gnome. Although they're called something different, but very gnome or dwarvish like. They're about dwarvish size, I believe. Dark Stalkers. Death Knight, so there you have your iconic Death Knight. So this will be showcased. This creature will be so showcased in Dragonlance. Lord Soph is a Death Knight, and so this is their contribution and one of the iconic contributions to Dungeons and Dragons. Period. So for this alone, the contribution of the Field Folio was a Fiend Folio was a great contribution to the game and to storytelling. I mean, just such an iconic type of a fiend, I should say, or a monstrosity to put into your game. Demons, so you have Lolth, and Lolth is also in. It's might also be in the monster manual as well. I'll have to double check that. Um, Styx Devils, Devil Dogs. I guess I didn't know that that was a name of a snack item. Dire Corby, Disenchanter. So they have Oriental dragons in here. And I'll have to compare this to the Oriental Adventures and see how these might be a little bit different. I'll do that when I get to the Oriental Adventures book, which I recently picked up as well. This here is a Dune Stalker. I think we faced these as well during one of our adventures. Elemental Princes of Evil. Prince of Evil, Earth Creatures. The Ogremok. So they have Drow in here as well. So there is a little bit, they had Drow obviously in the first edition as well, or Monster Manual 1, and so now they have them again here. So there might be some overlap, some crossover. The killer eye. The eye of fear and flame. So again, just kind of some like strange names that they used for some of the creatures. Fire newts. Fire snakes, a flail snail. Flind. Mulches of gnolls. Forlaren. Kind of sure we face those as well. Galtrit. Gambado. These Garbug, which looks very much like a flying lobster. Giants, so you have fog giants, you have mountain giants, which is obviously in Monster Manual 1 as well. Giant striders, which are probably used as mounts for the most part. Gibberlings, I've used those. There we have the Githyanki. So, psionic ability 150 to 250, defense modes, attack defense modes, all and all but J. So their attacks are all psionic attacks, and their defense modes are all but J. The Mind Flayers conquered a race of evil humans and bound them to service. Usually employed them as slaves, but from time to time selecting particularly choice victims for food. The humans harbored deep resentment for centuries, but could not summon up sufficient strength to free themselves from mind flayers. Yoke, gradually in secret, they developed their powers and strength, and then under the leadership of the supreme leader Gith, they rebelled against their captors. After a long and vicious struggle, succeeded in gaining their autonomy. From that moment, the race would become known as the Githyanki, and they quickly gained a reputation as powerful psionists and deadly fighters with an instinct for violence. They now dwell in the astral plane, but from time to time project themselves to the prime material plane, an innate ability now common to all members of the race. And like I said, there were a fearsome foe to be dealt with. We've used Grell before as well. I've used Grimlocks. Guardian Demons, or Daemons. A Horfox. Hokar. Hound of Ill Omen. I think this might have been a Ravenloft, one of these, but I'm a little bit vague on it. Ice lizards, iron cobras, which is basically a construct. Jakuli, Germlayan, or Jinskins. Genku, kind of like bipedal humanoid birds with wings. Probably be a playable race. Some of them might have actually been in, like I never played in any of the other settings other than World of Greyhawk. So some of these might have actually been introduced as playable races in Dark Sun or any of the other settings that I'm not that familiar with, to be honest with you. My playing days were from basically 77 through 87 or 88 or so, so before second edition came out. And then I was, off for about 2 decades or more from tabletop RPGs, and only just recently, 5 years ago, made my return back to tabletop RPGs. So I spent a lot of years with consoles and computer games and massively multiplayer role-playing games and such. Another really cool creature, the Lizard King, is something that it's in one of my favorite modules, which is now going to slip my mind. It wasn't the Reptile God one. It might have actually been the Tomb of the Lizard King, where it wasn't just a Lizard King, but it was also a vampiric Lizard King. I'm just looking for things that really jump out at me. I'm pretty sure Mephits were in the Monster Manual as well. Needlemen. Norkers, I think this one of my DMs used those. I've used these. Penanggalan. You can see there's a lot. It's 128 pages, and the majority of it, probably over 122 of it, is just creature and monster and beast all thrown in here. Revenants we've used. A lot of our campaigns, I had two DMs basically, and I did some DMing myself, and one of them was really into undead. We seem to be facing them often, and he also ran Ravenloft for us and such. So he was much more of our DM that would run us through the most dangerous of dungeons, and then our first DM that we had in our group would he was really into swamps and stuff like that. We did a lot of stuff with dragons and swamp creatures, lizard man and such, naga and those kinds of things. So my experience as a player back in the first decade of first edition Dungeons and Dragons was was really split between those two DMs, and they had very different styles and interest. I hated fighting Slot as well. Very powerful creatures. And once again, just you can see very powerful psionic abilities and such. And that was another thing that was our more deadly DM. Like to throw a lot of psionics at us. So, like I said earlier, I don't know if it was like one or the other. If that just turned my impression of the Fiend Folio as being a killer DM's tome of let's see what I can find that'll kick your ass. I'm still just looking for things that stood out as things that we faced or that I had used from the books. Giant two-headed trolls. Again, some of these I don't recall. I didn't sit down and do an actual comparison between the Monster Manual 1 and this to see what was there, what was here, and what was in both, what both had in common. I don't remember Ice Trolls. Ice Trolls were not in first edition, first Monster Manual. So that's an interesting introduction. And these things are not like hugely powerful either. So you can see 2-hit die is nothing, really major. All right, a giant troll 8-hit die. Now you're starting to talk about something that's fairly difficult to deal with for a mid-level party. Oh, excuse me. Especially with 1 to 12 appearing. We're getting close to the end here. Looks like a version of the Umber Hulk. Yeah, it is. Relatives of the Umber Hulk. Is it an aquatic version? Yes, an aquatic version of an Umber Hulk. All right. I faced these before. Volts. Looks like a cartoon character. Zarts. Almost done. Yellow musk zombies. And treasure tables. Human subtables. So just tables. Possibly, yeah, these are still all treasure tables here. Or number appearing. This is just the basic, also monster level. So here they have some leveling done here. So you can see monster level 2 and hit die. You can see they're fairly low here. Monster level 3, they're becoming a little bit more powerful as you go along. 4, so there is some attempt to organize them in ways that you can see if I'm looking to challenge my party, which type of creatures would I look to use. And this is listing them all from the Monster Manual 1 and from this book as well. So that's an interesting and useful resource for you. You're at monster level 8, and you can start seeing hit die or 10, 16, 12s, some 8s, but basically 7 point plus 7. Monster level 9. 10, let's see. Giant subtables, undead subtables, lots and lots of tables. Index and the epilogue. Looking back with some chagrin on the gestation period of this volume, which has been much longer than anyone could have anticipated, publication date is likely to be nearly 2 years after I wrote the introduction. And during that time, many things have happened. For one thing, I am now responsible for TSR Hobbies UK Limited and have been so for nearly a year. Yet at the time of the writing, the introduction, even my wildest dreams could not have predicted that this would have been so. But delay and serendipity are often bedfellows, and I am now able to greet this publication with even more pride because of my new association with the company. It may be appropriate to say that though this is the first British contribution to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons games, it will certainly be far from the last. And as I said earlier, they released a number of UK adventures that were just, just really, really good adventures, and I highly recommend you take a look at that series. Let's switch back here. So there you have it. My, somewhat deeper look into the Fiend Folio, and looking through it now, I struggle a little bit to find out what I didn't like so much about it, but then once again, I'm reminded with a lot of psionic creatures in here, which was something that we had developed an irrational fear, especially with our one dungeon master, who really loved to throw those kinds of things at us. So, but you definitely need to get your hands on this book if you don't have it already, and it is absolutely a true contribution to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition. So many iconic creatures that actually did come out of here. Some of them that I had forgotten originated from here as well. And so it's something that I look forward to using in my upcoming campaign. And once again, we'll pick up where we left off with the next book. So the next book in the series, I just see I erased my text down at the bottom. The next one will be the Monster Manual 2. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments that you want to leave in the comments section, please feel free to leave those comments in there. And once again, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. The channel is growing. It's grown a lot this month since I've been running this series. So I know this series has been very successful for the channel, and I really appreciate those of you that have been coming in and following, especially once I started doing these Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Editions. And finally, if you have any suggestions for something else that you want me to take a look at outside of this series, because I have all of the books, or will have all of the books, and I will eventually get through all of them over these next couple of weeks. But if you have anything outside of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition that you think I should take a look at, please feel free to leave that in there as well. So once again, thanks for joining. I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. Be safe out there, keep on gaming, and you all have a great rest of the afternoon. Take care.